The divorce papers trembled in my hands as I watched my wife's face drain of color. Rachel's eyes widened, darting between the official letterhead and my calm expression. The confusion in her gaze shifted to panic as I placed my business card on the kitchen counter between us. The gold-embossed logo of Phoenix Holdings caught the afternoon light. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. For all these years, I said, my voice steadier than the oak desk in my hidden office, I've paid every bill, covered your shopping sprees, even funded that luxury vacation you took with Marcus last month while telling me you were visiting your sister. I slid the bank statements across the granite surface, watching as they stopped perfectly at her fingertips. I transferred over $5,000 a month to your personal account when your actual part-time job at the gallery barely covered your morning lattes. Rachel's jaw slackened as 8 years of carefully constructed illusion collapsed around her. The woman who had dismissed me as just a struggling entrepreneur now stood frozen before the silent investor who had secretly bankrolled her entire lifestyle. "This can't be real," she whispered, gripping the counter as though the floor beneath her had vanished. I slid the divorce papers across the granite surface, watching as they stopped perfectly at her fingertips. "It's all very real. You have 30 days to move out, and the $4,800 monthly mortgage payment? I won't be covering that anymore. My name is Olivia, I'm 38, and the secret owner of a multi-million-dollar investment firm. This is the story of how I reclaimed my life from the woman who betrayed me with my so-called business partner while I orchestrated the biggest business deal of my career. The day I overheard Rachel and Marcus laughing in our home office, I thought they were finally collaborating on the charity event I'd suggested. 3 months had passed since I'd introduced my wife to my business partner. 3 months of working late nights on a venture that would either make or break my career. 3 months of coming home to find Rachel increasingly distant, constantly checking her phone and making excuses to leave the house. I stood in the hallway, coffee mugs in hand, ready to surprise them with a mid-afternoon pick-me-up. Then Marcus's voice drifted through the cracked door, low and intimate, in a way business partners should never speak to each other. "When are you going to tell her?" he asked. "This charade can't go on forever. She's sweet, but let's be honest. She's going nowhere fast with that business of hers." Rachel's laugh, the same melodic sound that had once made my heart soar, now pierced it like shattered glass. "Olivia lives in a fantasy world. She thinks her little consulting firm is going to take off any day now. 8 years I've supported her dream while watching our savings dwindle. I'm tired of living on the edge financially." Something inside me shattered, not because she was betraying me. I'd already grown suspicious of her late nights and mysterious text messages. It was the sheer dismissiveness of her tone. She hadn't just turned away from our marriage. She'd never believed in me at all. My hands trembled as I set the coffee mugs down silently on the hallway table. Tears threatened to spill over, but I refused to let them hear me break. I'd never shown Rachel the truth about my professional life. When we met at an art gallery opening 8 years ago, I'd been captivated by her passionate knowledge of contemporary art, the way her eyes lit up when describing the interplay of light and shadow in a particular piece. I believed I'd found someone who saw beauty in the world the way I did. After we married, I maintained the fiction that I was struggling to build a small consulting business while secretly running my investment firm. I'd always wanted to live authentically, finding a partner who loved me for who I was, not what I owned. I used my grandmother's name as the legal representative to keep my identity hidden. I conducted video meetings in a private office downtown, far from Rachel's curious eyes. The deception wasn't meant to deceive her specifically, but to protect myself. A deep-seated fear of being valued only for my wealth had haunted me since my father's death left me with an unexpected inheritance at 23. I'd watched family members and former friends circle like vultures, their affection directly proportional to what they thought they could gain. At first, I truly believed Rachel was different, but that seemingly genuine connection began to fade when she started showing her true priorities. Her part-time job at an upscale gallery barely covered her personal expenses, yet when I gently suggested she take on more hours or look for a better opportunity, she'd snap. "Not everyone needs to be consumed by their career," she'd say, eyes flashing with something I'd later recognize as resentment. "Some of us want to enjoy life, not just work ourselves to death." Her eyes would narrow slightly, revealing the materialistic values beneath her artistic exterior. I couldn't understand how someone who had once claimed to value authenticity and creative expression could now take sincere advice as an insult. Her inconsistency baffled me, but I kept trying to make it work, thinking that as long as I quietly supported our life financially, everything would be fine. Every month, I transferred $5,000 into Rachel's personal account as a gift from a family trust fund I'd fabricated to explain the extra income. She'd burn through it in weeks, then complain about how we needed to be more careful with money. I stayed silent, not because I didn't know she was spending on designer clothes and spa treatments. Her credit card statements, automatically sent to my email as joint account holder, told the story her words never would. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What hurt wasn't the money. With my income, that amount wasn't significant. It was her growing duplicity. She never once asked about my day beyond a perfunctory, "How's the business?" Never noticed when I stayed up late analyzing market trends or flew to different cities for meetings disguised as, quote, networking events. In Rachel's eyes, I was just a woman with an adorable but ultimately futile entrepreneurial phase, while she was the sophisticated one bringing culture and social connections to our marriage. The worst part was watching her condescension toward my closest friend, Sophie, who had been by my side since college and was the only person who knew the truth about my business. One Friday evening, Sophie stopped by with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and spreadsheets for a project we were collaborating on, officially for my consulting business, but actually for a major acquisition I was orchestrating. When Rachel walked in from her gallery event, which I'd later discover was dinner with Marcus, she took one look at our papers spread across the dining table and sighed loudly. "Again with the endless work?" she muttered, dropping her bag dramatically. "There's always some business crisis in this house." Sophie kept her smile, trying to stay polite. "We're just finishing up. I brought enough pad thai for everyone if you're hungry." Rachel glanced at the takeout containers with barely disguised disdain. "No thanks. I've already eaten somewhere with proper ambiance." She turned to me, speaking as if Sophie wasn't even there. "I don't understand why you waste so much time on this business that's clearly going nowhere." Sophie enables these delusions of yours. The pain in Sophie's eyes cut through me like a knife. This was the woman who had stood by me through everything, who had helped me build my company from the ground up, now being treated like an enabler of failure. When Sophie left early that night, I turned to Rachel, no longer holding back. "Do you realize how hurtful you're being?" She looked at me, unfazed. "I'm just being honest. Someone needs to give you a reality check about this business fantasy of yours." I stood still in our expensively furnished living room for a long time after she'd gone upstairs. The home I'd secretly paid for no longer felt warm. Everything I had built now felt like it was covered in a thin veneer of lies, some my own, some Rachel's. I don't remember exactly when I decided to investigate further, only that I found myself sitting in my car outside an upscale restaurant 2 weeks later, watching through the window as Rachel reached across the table to touch Marcus's hand. Their laughter, their intimate gestures, it was all unmistakable. My business partner and my wife betraying me together. That night, I texted Rachel briefly saying I'd be working late again on my struggling business. She didn't reply, probably too busy planning her evening with Marcus. I went to my real office instead, the sleek downtown high-rise where I actually ran Phoenix Holdings. The security guard nodded respectfully as I entered. Here, everyone knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. I sat in my corner office overlooking the city lights, the same city where, 15 blocks away, my wife thought I was hunched over a laptop in some sad co-working space. The contrast was almost laughable. I pulled up the company files and began searching for every project Marcus had touched. Marcus Donovan had joined my firm 3 years ago, bringing with him an impressive client list and an even more impressive ability to close deals. I'd trusted him, mentored him, even considered making him a junior partner. And this was how he repaid my faith, by pursuing my wife while mocking my supposed failure. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that Phoenix Holdings was on the verge of acquiring Meridian Global, a mid-sized competitor whose client portfolio would catapult us into the top tier of investment firms nationwide. Marcus had been working on pieces of the deal, but only I knew the full scope. If the acquisition went through, my struggling business would triple in value overnight. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a triple life. The oblivious wife at home, the desperate entrepreneur in public, and the ruthless CEO behind closed doors. I watched as Rachel made flimsy excuses to meet Marcus. I listened to their thinly veiled phone conversations. I even found receipts for jewelry I'd never received, charged to our joint account. All the while, I accelerated the Meridian acquisition, working around the clock to ensure Marcus couldn't interfere when I finally made my move. Sophie was my rock during this time, helping me prepare both the business maneuver and my personal exit strategy. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" she asked one night as we finalized the paperwork in my office. "It's not too late to confront them, try couples therapy." I looked up from the documents, my gaze unwavering. "They didn't just betray my trust, Sophie. They've been laughing at me, pitying me, while living off my success. No, I want them to see exactly who they've been underestimating." The morning I signed the final acquisition papers for Meridian Global, I also transferred our household accounts to my name only, quietly removed my most treasured possessions from our home, and gave instructions to my lawyer. The press release announcing Phoenix Holdings' acquisition of Meridian went live at 9 a.m., with my full name and photo prominently featured as founder and CEO. By 10:30 a.m., my phone was buzzing continuously with notifications. Industry news outlets were calling it the deal of the year. Financial analysts were praising the strategic brilliance of the acquisition. And somewhere across town, I knew Marcus would be staring at his computer screen in absolute shock. I waited in my office, counting down the minutes. At 11:45 a.m., my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Miss Shepard, Marcus Donovan is here to see you. He seems distressed." I straightened my tailored blazer and took a deep breath. "Send him in!" Marcus burst through the door, his normally perfectly styled hair disheveled, his face flushed with anger and confusion. He stopped dead when he saw me sitting behind the imposing desk, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city skyline behind me. "What the hell is this, Olivia?" he demanded, slapping a printout of the press release onto my desk. "Phoenix Holdings is your company? You acquired Meridian? This has to be some kind of joke." I leaned forward slightly, my voice measured and calm. "The joke, Marcus, was watching my business partner and my wife carry on behind my back while mocking my failing business. The joke was hearing you tell Rachel that I was going nowhere fast while you were cashing paychecks I signed." His face drained of color as the full implications hit him. "I don't understand. All this time you were working for me, not with me," I said, standing slowly. "And as of this morning, you're not working for me at all. Security has already cleared out your office. Your company email and access credentials have been revoked." Marcus staggered backward as if I'd struck him. "You can't do this. I brought in half those Meridian clients. I built those relationships." I smiled coolly. "Check your employment contract, particularly Section 12 regarding client relationships and company ownership. Your termination package is generous, more than you deserve, but I suggest you talk to a lawyer before you think about challenging it." His face contorted with rage, then crumpled into something like fear. "Rachel doesn't know, does she?" he whispered. "Not yet," I replied, glancing at my watch. "But she will in about 30 minutes when I get home for our long-overdue conversation." As Marcus was escorted from the building, I gathered the final pieces of evidence: bank statements showing my contributions to our household, photos of Rachel and Marcus together, the finalized divorce papers prepared by my attorney. I placed them all in a sleek leather portfolio and headed home for the last time. Rachel was in the kitchen when I arrived, scrolling through her phone with a bored expression. She glanced up, surprise flickering across her face. "You're home early. Gave up on the business for the day?" "Actually," I said, setting down the portfolio, "the business is doing quite well. So well, in fact, that it made the financial news today." I slid my phone across the counter, open to the headline. Phoenix Holdings acquires Meridian Global in landmark deal. CEO Olivia Shepherd poised to become industry leader. Rachel stared at the screen, then at my face, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and then dawning horror as she saw her own world begin to crumble. "This is your Olivia Shepherd?" "The very same," I replied, opening the portfolio to reveal the first bank statement. "For all these years, I've paid every bill, covered your shopping sprees. Even funded that luxury vacation you took with Marcus last month while telling me you were visiting your sister." And there it was, the moment her carefully constructed world collapsed, revealed in the widening of her eyes and the trembling of her perfectly manicured hands. The divorce papers trembled in my hands as I watched my wife's face drain of color. "This can't be real," Rachel whispered, gripping the counter as though the floor beneath her had vanished. I watched her, this woman I'd once loved beyond reason, as 8 years of marriage dissolved between us like sugar in rain. The strength I felt wasn't vindictive. It was the quiet power of finally standing in my truth. "When?" she asked, her voice small. "How long have you been this?" She gestured vaguely at the press release still glowing on my phone screen. "Since before we met," I replied, my voice level. "Phoenix Holdings was already successful when you thought I was just starting my cute little consulting business. I wanted someone who loved me for me, not for my money or status. I guess I got half my wish. You certainly never loved me for my success." Rachel's shoulders slumped as the weight of her miscalculation pressed down on her. "And Marcus? He worked for you?" "Senior investment strategist. Until about an hour ago, when I fired him." I took a slow, deliberate sip from my water glass. Apparently he wasn't as strategic as he thought. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, but I recognized them for what they were. Not remorse for betraying me, but grief for the lifestyle she was about to lose. "Olivia, we can work this out. I made a mistake, yes, but—" "Stop." I raised my hand. "The time for working things out was before you started sleeping with my employee while mocking my supposed failure. The divorce papers are non-negotiable. You have 30 days to find a new place and move out." The color drained from her face. "30 days? That's impossible. Where am I supposed to go? How will I pay for anything?" A grim smile tugged at my lips. "Perhaps Marcus can help. Oh wait, he's unemployed now too. What a coincidence." I stood, gathering the portfolio, leaving only the divorce papers on the counter. "You told me once that not everyone needs to be consumed by their career, that some people want to enjoy life. Well, I've built a career that I love, and a life I enjoy. It's just taken me until now to realize that you aren't part of either anymore." I didn't look back as I walked out of the kitchen, out of the house that had never truly been a home. My real home was waiting, a penthouse I'd purchased months ago, when I first suspected Rachel's infidelity, already furnished with the things that mattered to me. Sophie had helped move my personal items gradually, so methodically that Rachel never noticed what was missing. Before I reached my car, my phone rang, Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, another call. Rachel. Ignored. Then a text from Sophie. "It's done. Are you okay?" I typed back quickly. "Never better. Meeting still on for 7?" Her response came immediately. "Absolutely." Champagne's already chilling. As I drove toward downtown, toward the skyline that housed my empire, I felt an unexpected lightness. For years, I'd carried the weight of my deception, justified as it was, along with the growing heaviness of my failing marriage. Now both were gone, and in their place was something I hadn't anticipated: freedom. That evening, as Sophie and I toasted the successful acquisition and my personal liberation, my phone buzzed again. "Rachel, aren't you going to answer that?" Sophie asked, eyebrow raised. I glanced at the screen, then silenced it. No more hiding, no more pretending. That includes pretending I owe her an explanation. To freedom, Sophie raised her glass, eyes twinkling with approval. To authenticity, I countered, clinking my glass against hers. The next morning, I walked into my office to thunderous applause. The acquisition news had spread throughout the company, and my team, the people who had always known exactly who I was, lined the hallway to the boardroom where our executive meeting was scheduled. "Quite the chess move, Olivia," said James, my CFO, as we took our seats. "Taking out Meridian and your backstabbing right-hand man in one swoop." I smiled. The Meridian acquisition was always the plan. Marcus's exit was just good timing. The meeting proceeded smoothly, everyone energized by our new position in the market. As we wrapped up, my assistant appeared at the door. "Miss Shepard, there's someone insisting on seeing you. A Mrs. Rachel Shepard? Security is holding her in the lobby." The room fell silent. Everyone knew I was married, though I'd kept my personal life separate from the office. Now those worlds were colliding spectacularly. "Tell security I'll be down in 5 minutes," I said, gathering my notes calmly. James leaned in as the others filed out. "Want backup?" I shook my head. Some confrontations need to happen face to face. When I stepped off the elevator into the lobby, I saw Rachel immediately. Gone was her usual polished appearance. Her hair was pulled back haphazardly, her face free of makeup, her clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. Security stood at a respectful distance, watching her closely. "Olivia!" she called, rushing toward me before stopping abruptly as the security guard moved forward. "Please, just 5 minutes." I nodded to the guard, then gestured toward a small conference room off the lobby. 5 minutes. Once inside, Rachel seemed to deflate, sinking into a chair. I called Marcus. He won't answer. His apartment was locked. The landlord said he left last night with suitcases. He's gone. I remained standing, arms crossed. What did you expect? That he'd stand by you once the money disappeared? Men like Marcus are only loyal to opportunity. "It wasn't just about money," she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "We had a connection. He understood me." "He understood you were married to someone he thought was a failure," I corrected. "Now he knows you were married to his boss. Quite the plot twist for your romance novel." Rachel looked up, tears streaming now. "How can you be so cold? 8 years together, and you can just end it like this? 8 years of me supporting you while you complained about money. 8 years of you belittling my work while living off its proceeds. And how long were you seeing Marcus? 3 months? 4? She flinched. 6. I absorbed the blow without showing pain. 6 months, half a year of betrayal while I built the deal that would transform my company. "Why did you even marry me?" she asked suddenly. "If you were so successful, why the charade? Why me?" The question caught me off guard, piercing through my armor of righteous anger. Why her? Because she'd made me laugh on our first date, describing a disastrous art installation that involved melting ice sculptures. Because she'd seen beauty in things others overlooked. Because I'd thought her passion for art reflected a depth of character that could appreciate more than material success. "I loved you," I said simply. "I thought you were different." For the first time, genuine regret flickered across her face. "I did love you, Olivia, at the beginning, but feeling like the successful one, the one keeping us afloat. It made me feel needed. When that turned out to be a lie. It wasn't a lie. I needed you, just not financially." I moved toward the door. "Your 5 minutes are up." "Wait!" She stood desperately. "What about the house? My car? My life, Olivia? You can't just take everything." I turned back, fixing her with a steady gaze. "I'm not taking everything. The divorce settlement offers 3 months, living expenses, and the car. The rest, the house, the art collection, the vacation property, those stay with me. They were always mine." 3 months? She gasped. "Then what? Then you do what millions of adults do every day. You work, you earn, you build something real, instead of living off someone else's success while secretly resenting them for it." As I opened the door, she called after me. "You'll regret this, Olivia. You think you're so strong, but you'll be alone." I paused. then looked back one last time. I was already alone in our marriage, Rachel. The difference now is I know it. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt like the period at the end of a very long, complicated sentence. As I crossed the lobby toward the elevators, I noticed my team gathered near the reception desk, pretending not to watch. They'd heard everything. The walls of that conference room weren't exactly soundproof. Instead of embarrassment, I felt a curious relief. No more compartmentalizing, no more secrets. I was Olivia Shepard, CEO of Phoenix Holdings, a woman strong enough to build an empire and brave enough to rebuild her life. I nodded to my team as I passed. Quarterly projections in 30 minutes. I expect everyone to be ready. Normal, professional, moving forward. Later that afternoon, as I reviewed the integration plan for Meridian's assets, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "It's Marcus, we need to talk. I know things about your business you don't want getting out." I stared at the message, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Was he bluffing? Had he accessed confidential information? I had been careful, meticulous even. But Marcus had been highly placed in my organization. He might have seen things that could be damaging if presented out of context. I forwarded the message to my head of legal with a simple note: "Handle this." Then I turned back to my work, refusing to let Marcus occupy any more space in my mind than necessary. 3 days after Rachel's office visit, the locks on my penthouse were changed as a precaution. Security protocols at Phoenix were tightened. My legal team sent cease and desist letters to both Rachel and Marcus, warning against any disclosure of proprietary information or defamatory statements. Marcus responded through his lawyer, demanding a larger severance package in exchange for his, quote, "continued discretion." My legal team's response was swift and unequivocal. Any attempt at extortion would result in immediate legal action, including criminal charges. He backed down, though I knew this wouldn't be the end. Men like Marcus don't accept defeat gracefully. Rachel, meanwhile, had begun moving her things out of the house. Sophie drove by occasionally to check, reporting that Rachel seemed to be taking only her personal items: clothing, jewelry, the few pieces of art that had been gifts specifically to her. "You know," Sophie said during one of our evening debriefings, "for all her faults, she's not trying to clean you out." That's something, at least. I shrugged, swirling my wine thoughtfully. Perhaps she's finally realizing actions have consequences. Or perhaps she did love you, in her way, Sophie suggested gently. People are complicated, Liv, even the ones who hurt us. I didn't want to admit it, but part of me still ached for what might have been. The partnership I'd thought we had, the future we'd planned together. That grief existed alongside the anger and resolve, a complex emotional tapestry I was only beginning to unravel. "Enough about Rachel," I said firmly. "Tell me about the Robinson portfolio. Are they staying with us through the transition?" Sophie recognized the deflection but allowed it, shifting seamlessly to business matters. That was the gift of true friendship, knowing when to push and when to simply be present in whatever capacity needed. As the weeks passed, Phoenix Holdings' integration of Meridian proceeded smoothly. Our stock price climbed steadily, and industry publications ran profiles of me, the stealth CEO, who had built a financial powerhouse while maintaining a remarkably low profile. I declined most interview requests, focusing instead on consolidating our new position and reassuring nervous Meridian clients. 30 days after serving Rachel the divorce papers, I received notice from my lawyer that she had vacated the house completely. The property management company I'd hired had changed the locks and begun preparing the house for sale. Another chapter closed. That evening, I stood on my penthouse balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over the skyline. My phone rang, a familiar number. "Hello, Mother," I answered, bracing myself. "Olivia," my mother's voice was crisp as ever. "I just saw your feature in Business Insider. Quite the coup with Meridian. Your father would have been proud." Coming from her, this was effusive praise. Eleanor Shepard had been my father's equal partner in business before his death, though she'd stepped back afterward, leaving the company to me. Our relationship had always been complex, loving but restrained, supportive but demanding. "Thank you," I said simply. "And Rachel?" The article mentioned you were recently divorced. Of course she would notice that single line buried in the middle of the profile. Yes, it's been finalized. A pause. I never liked her. I couldn't help but laugh. You never said anything. Would you have listened? You were determined to see something special in her. Perhaps not, I admitted, but I'm listening now. Another pause, longer this time. Come to dinner on Sunday. We have catching up to do. After we hung up, I remained on the balcony, contemplating this unexpected olive branch. My mother and I had drifted apart during my marriage. Partly because of Rachel's subtle manipulations, partly because I'd been so determined to build my own path, separate from my parents' legacy. Now, standing alone in the gathering darkness, I realized how much unnecessary isolation I'd created in my life. The secrecy that had begun as self-protection had evolved into walls that kept everyone at a distance, even those who might have been allies. The next morning, as I prepared for a board meeting, my assistant notified me of an unusual visitor. "There's a Jason Moore here to see you. He says he's from the gallery where Rachel worked?" Curious, I agreed to a brief meeting. Jason turned out to be a slight, nervous man in his 50s, clutching a leather portfolio similar to the one I'd used to present Rachel with the divorce papers, a coincidence that wasn't lost on me. "Ms. Shepherd," he began after declining coffee, "I'm the owner of Ethereal Gallery. Rachel worked for me for several years. I know who you are," I said, though in truth, I'd never met him. Rachel had always insisted on keeping our social circles separate. Another red flag I'd ignored. He fidgeted with the portfolio. Rachel borrowed several pieces from the gallery, supposedly for a client viewing at their home. But they never came back. When I confronted her, she resigned immediately. That was 3 weeks ago. My stomach tightened. "And you think I have these pieces?" "No," he said quickly. "I know you don't, but the insurance company needs a formal statement from you confirming you never saw these works in your home. Otherwise," he trailed off, "otherwise it looks like I might be involved in art theft." I finished for him. He nodded miserably. I leaned back in my chair, processing this latest betrayal. Rachel had always been passionate about art. It was one of the things that had drawn me to her. Had that passion crossed into criminality, or was this a desperate attempt to secure funds now that her financial safety net was gone? Either way, it was no longer my problem. I signed Jason's statement, assured him I would cooperate with any investigation, and sent him on his way. Then I called my lawyer to give him a heads up about this latest development. As I ended the call, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. Each new revelation about Rachel should have hurt, should have made me question my judgment even more. Instead, they were oddly freeing, confirming that ending our marriage had been not just necessary, but long overdue. That night, for the first time since discovering Rachel's affair, I slept deeply and dreamlessly, waking refreshed as morning light streamed through my bedroom windows. The weight of deception, both Rachel's and my own, was lifting, leaving room for something new to grow in its place. Over breakfast, I made a decision that had been forming gradually in my mind. It was time to step out of the shadows completely. No more hiding behind proxies or maintaining artificial divisions between my personal and professional lives. If I'd learned anything from this ordeal, it was that authenticity, though sometimes painful, was ultimately liberating. I called an all-hands meeting for that afternoon, something I rarely did. As my employees gathered in our largest conference room, curiosity evident on their faces, I took a deep breath and stepped to the front of the room. "For years," I began, "many of you have worked with me without fully knowing me. Today, that changes." "For years," I began, "many of you have worked with me without fully knowing me. Today, that changes." The conference room fell silent, all eyes fixed on me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. These were the people who had helped build Phoenix Holdings, who had executed my vision flawlessly, who deserved more than the compartmentalized leader I'd been. Some of you have heard rumors about my personal life in the past week. Rather than let speculation continue, I want to address this directly. I took a deep breath. Yes, my marriage has ended. Yes, Marcus Donovan was involved with my ex-wife and has been terminated. And yes, the woman many of you knew as just the boss's wife at company events had no idea who I really was professionally until recently. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I raised my hand slightly, and they quieted. That last part was my choice. A misguided attempt to find authentic connection in my personal life by keeping it separate from my professional identity. I've realized that dividing yourself into pieces doesn't lead to wholeness. Moving forward, Phoenix Holdings will reflect the values I truly believe in: transparency, integrity, and authentic connection. I outlined new initiatives: more open communication channels between departments, a mentorship program for promising employees, community engagement projects that would put our faces and names, not just our company logo, into the neighborhoods where we operated. We've acquired Meridian not just to grow bigger, but to build something better, something that benefits not just our bottom line but the people who make that success possible, including all of you. As the meeting concluded, many employees lingered, some approaching with words of support or questions about the new initiatives. James, my CFO, waited until the room had mostly cleared before approaching. "Bold move," he said, leaning against the conference table. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying," I admitted with a small laugh. "But right." He nodded thoughtfully. "The team respects authenticity. You'll see, this will make us stronger." "That's the hope," I replied, gathering my notes. "Now we just have to deliver on all those promises I just made." James grinned. "Never known you not to, boss." That evening, I met Sophie for our regular dinner, this time at a small bistro near my penthouse. As we settled into our table, she studied my face intently. "You look different," she declared. "Lighter somehow." I smiled, realizing she was right. "I gave a speech to the entire company today. Told them everything. Well, the relevant parts. No more compartmentalizing." Sophie raised her wine glass in a toast to integration of companies and selves. We clinked glasses, and as I took a sip, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. "Police visited Rachel today regarding the missing artwork. But you should know." I showed Sophie the message, sighing. "Just when I think I'm free of the drama." "Are you worried?" she asked, concern creasing her brow. I considered the question. Not about legal implications. I had nothing to do with whatever she did, but I do wonder if I missed signs that she was capable of this. If I was so blinded by wanting our relationship to work that I overlooked fundamental character flaws. Sophie reached across the table, squeezing my hand gently. "Liv, even with your brilliant business mind, you can't predict every human behavior. Rachel fooled a lot of people, not just you." "Including herself, perhaps," I mused. She thought she was settling for a struggling entrepreneur, enduring financial insecurity for love. In reality, she was living off my success while resenting me for failures that weren't real. "The irony would be delicious if it weren't so sad," Sophie remarked. We finished dinner discussing the Meridian integration, deliberately steering away from Rachel and the unfolding art theft investigation. As we walked back toward my building, Sophie linked her arm through mine. "You know what you need? A vacation. When was the last time you took more than a long weekend?" I laughed. "I honestly can't remember." "Exactly. The acquisition is done. The integration team is solid. Take 2 weeks. Go somewhere without cell service." I started to protest, but the idea took root. 2 weeks of sunshine and silence. No crisis calls, no legal updates, no running into Rachel or Marcus in the city's surprisingly small social circles. "Maybe you're right," I conceded, "but not right away. There's something I need to do first." The following Sunday, I pulled up to my mother's estate in the suburbs, a sprawling property that had always felt more like a museum than a home. The elegant Georgian facade, the perfectly manicured gardens, everything about it spoke of careful curation rather than comfortable living. My mother waited on the front steps, ramrod straight despite her 70 years, silver hair swept into an immaculate chignon. As I approached, she surprised me by opening her arms for an embrace. "You look well," she said as she released me, studying my face with keen eyes. "Divorce agrees with you." I couldn't help but laugh at her characteristic bluntness. "Not divorce specifically. Truth, perhaps. She nodded, leading me inside. They're often the same thing. Over dinner in the formal dining room, my mother wasn't one for casual meals in kitchens. We circled each other carefully, exchanging surface-level updates until the dessert plates were cleared and we moved to the library with coffee. "I owe you an apology," she said abruptly, setting her cup down with a decisive click. I blinked, startled. Eleanor Shepard didn't apologize. She justified, explained, sometimes reconsidered, but never apologized. "For what?" I asked carefully. "For not warning you more explicitly about Rachel." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her silk pants. "I saw what she was from the beginning, a climber, a user. But you were so determined to find someone who loved you for yourself, not your position or money. That's why you pulled back," I realized aloud. "You weren't just giving us space as newlyweds, you were avoiding having to witness it." She inclined her head slightly. I couldn't bear to watch and say nothing. "But I knew you wouldn't listen if I spoke up. You'd think I was being elitist or controlling." "I would have," I admitted. "I needed to learn it for myself." My mother's gaze softened fractionally. "You always did. Even as a child, you had to touch the hot stove to believe it would burn." We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner the only sound. "Your father would be proud," she said finally. "Not just of Phoenix, but of how you've handled this situation, with dignity." Coming from Eleanor Shepard, this was the equivalent of a tearful, emotional declaration from anyone else. I felt my throat tighten unexpectedly. "I've been thinking about him a lot lately," I said, wondering if he ever felt as divided as I have, being one person in the boardroom and another at home. My mother's laugh held a hint of genuine amusement. "Oh, Olivia, your father was exactly the same man everywhere he went. That's what made him both brilliant and occasionally insufferable. And you loved him for it." "I respected him for it," she corrected. "The love came from elsewhere. His kindness, his humor, the way he always brought me coffee in bed, even when he had early meetings." Her eyes took on a faraway look. "Don't mistake authenticity for perfection, darling. Your father was consistently himself, but that self had many facets." As I drove home that night, her words echoed in my mind. The compartmentalization I'd been so determined to dismantle wasn't necessarily about being different people in different contexts. It was about hiding significant parts of myself out of fear. The next morning, I submitted my vacation request to the board. 2 weeks, starting the following Monday. I booked a secluded villa on a small Greek island, arranged for a temporary suspension of my work email, and began making lists of books I'd been meaning to read for pleasure rather than business intelligence. 3 days before my departure, as I was wrapping up loose ends at the office, my assistant informed me of a visitor, Detective Laura Hayes from the Financial Crimes Unit. My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral as I invited her in. "How can I help you, Detective?" She was younger than I'd expected, with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "I'm investigating the theft of several valuable artworks from Ethereal Gallery. I understand the primary suspect was married to you until recently." "That's correct. We finalized our divorce last month." She consulted her notebook. "And you've provided a statement that you never saw these works in your shared home?" "Yes, through the gallery owner. I'm happy to provide a formal statement for your investigation as well." Detective Hayes studied me with professional curiosity. "Ms. Shepard, in cases like this, we often find that spouses are aware of more than they initially recall. Financial records show your ex-wife had significant cash deposits in the weeks before your separation, deposits that don't match her legitimate income." I leaned forward slightly. "Detective, until very recently, Rachel believed I was a struggling entrepreneur. She had no idea of my actual financial position or professional role. If she was making unusual deposits, I can assure you they didn't come from me." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "That's an unusual dynamic." "It was a mistake," I acknowledged. "One I've paid for in ways beyond financial." She nodded slowly, making a note. "We've been tracking Marcus Donovan as well. He left the country 3 days ago. Zurich. Did you know?" I shook my head, genuinely surprised. I haven't had any contact with him since his termination. The timing is interesting. Right after we interviewed Ms. Calloway about the missing artwork. She closed her notebook. If you hear from either of them, I'd appreciate a call. After she left, I sat at my desk, staring out at the city skyline. Marcus in Zurich. Rachel suspected of art theft. The neat conclusion I'd imagined for this chapter of my life was unraveling into something messier, more complicated. I picked up my phone and called Sophie. Change of plans. I need to leave for vacation immediately. Can you handle things here? Of course, she replied without hesitation. What's happened? I filled her in on the detective's visit and Marcus's disappearance. I need to get away before this pulls me back in. The police can contact my lawyer if they need anything else. That night, I finished packing while half listening to the evening news. A segment on financial markets caught my attention. A Swiss bank was under investigation for handling funds tied to an international art theft ring. The reporter mentioned several galleries hit in recent months, including one in my city. My phone rang, an unknown international number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Olivia. Marcus's voice, tense and hurried. Don't hang up. I should, I replied coldly, and then called Detective Hayes. Listen to me, he insisted. Rachel's in trouble. She didn't steal that art. I did. Used my key to her gallery after hours. She had no idea until after, when I needed her help selling it. I sank onto the edge of my bed. Why are you telling me this? Because they're closing in, and she won't leave the country. Says she won't run from her mistakes. His laugh was hollow. Noble suddenly, when it's too late. What do you expect me to do about it? A pause. Nothing. I just thought you should know. She may have betrayed you, but this particular crime, that was me. Using her, like I used you. Goodbye, Marcus, I said quietly, ending the call. I sat motionless for several minutes, weighing my options. Finally, I called Detective Hayes' number from her card. Miss Shepherd, she answered, sounding surprised. What can I do for you? I just received a call from Marcus Donovan, I said without preamble. He confessed to stealing the artwork, claiming Rachel was only involved after the fact. He's in Switzerland, though I don't have an exact location. A long pause. That's extremely helpful information. May I ask why you're sharing it? It was a fair question. Why was I helping Rachel after everything she'd done? Justice should be accurate, I said finally, even for people who've hurt you. After ending the call, I finished packing with a strange sense of lightness. I'd spent so long hiding parts of myself, constructing elaborate shields against vulnerability. Now, paradoxically, a simple act of fairness towards someone who had betrayed me felt like the most authentic thing I'd done in years. My flight left early the next morning. As the plane lifted above the clouds, I gazed out the window at the shrinking city below. The buildings where I'd built my company, the neighborhoods where I'd constructed and then dismantled my marriage, all receding into a miniature version of themselves. 2 weeks on a sun-drenched island brought clarity I hadn't realized I needed. I swam in the crystalline Aegean, read novels instead of quarterly reports, and slept dreamlessly through the night. I kept my phone off except for a daily check-in with Sophie, who assured me everything at Phoenix was running smoothly. On my 3rd day there, she mentioned that the art theft case had made local news. Marcus had been arrested in Zurich and was facing extradition. Rachel had been charged as an accessory after the fact, a lesser offense, but still serious. Do you want me to send the article? Quote. Sophie asked. No, I decided. I don't need the details. When I returned to the city, tanned and rested, Phoenix Holdings was thriving. The Meridian integration was proceeding ahead of schedule, client retention was higher than projected, and team morale had improved significantly since my all-hands meeting. Your transparency gambit paid off. James reported during our first executive meeting post-vacation. People feel more invested when they understand the bigger picture. I nodded, not surprised but still gratified. And the PR initiatives? The Community Financial Literacy Program launches next month. Our marketing director replied. We've already got waiting lists for the workshops. This was perhaps the most meaningful outcome of my decision to step out of the shadows, redirecting a portion of our profits toward programs that empowered others financially. Knowledge was freedom, a lesson I'd learned painfully but thoroughly. 6 months after the divorce, I received a letter from Rachel, handwritten, postmarked from the city detention center where she awaited trial. I nearly threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Olivia, it began, I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it, but I need you to know that I'm grateful, not for your statement to the police, though that did help my case, but for showing me what integrity looks like. What I did to you was unforgivable. What I allowed Marcus to involve me in was criminal. I'm facing the consequences of both now, and trying to find some way forward that isn't built on lies or using others. I know we'll never speak again, but I wanted to thank you for being the one person in my life who actually lived by their principles, even when it would have been easier not to. R. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer, not because I treasured it, but because it represented closure, a final acknowledgement that what had broken between us couldn't be repaired, but could be recognized for what it had always been. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party in my penthouse. Sophie, James, my mother, and a few close friends I'd reconnected with since the divorce. As we gathered around the table, I looked at these people who knew me, truly knew me, not some curated version I presented, and felt a sense of belonging I'd been searching for all along. A toast, I said, raising my glass, to second chances and living whole. They raised their glasses in return, smiles warm and genuine. As conversation flowed around me, I thought about the journey of the past year, from deception to authenticity, from compartmentalization to integration. The Phoenix Holdings annual charity gala the following month marked my first major public appearance since the divorce and subsequent revelations. As I stepped onto the stage to deliver the opening remarks, I scanned the crowded ballroom. Clients, colleagues, community partners, all gathered to support educational initiatives for underserved communities. 10 years ago, I began. I founded this company with a vision of building wealth, not just financial capital, but human capital, social capital, community capital. Along the way, I lost sight of how those different forms of wealth need to work in harmony, not in isolation from each other. The room was silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on me with rapt attention. I tried to separate my professional success from my personal life, thinking that was the only way to find authentic connection. I was wrong. True connection, whether in business, friendship, or love, comes from bringing your whole self to the table, vulnerabilities and strengths alike. In the front row, Sophie gave me an encouraging nod. That's why tonight isn't just about raising money, though we'll certainly do that too. Appreciative laughter rippled through the crowd. It's about recognizing that our greatest asset isn't on any balance sheet. It's our capacity to show up authentically, to contribute meaningfully, and to lift others as we ourselves rise. The applause was thunderous, but it wasn't the external validation that filled me with quiet satisfaction. It was the knowledge that for the first time in my adult life, I was standing fully in my truth. CEO, daughter, friend, woman finding her way forward after betrayal, all parts of the same integrated whole. 1 year to the day after serving Rachel with divorce papers, I stood in my office overlooking the city, a glass of champagne in hand. Sophie entered quietly, closing the door behind her. "Happy anniversary," she said with a wry smile, raising her own glass. 1 year of freedom. I laughed softly. Is that what we're celebrating? That, and the Peterson acquisition. And your mother finally agreeing to join the board. And the community center breaking ground next month. She ticked off each achievement on her fingers. Take your pick. I moved to stand beside her at the window, both of us gazing out at the skyline bathed in late afternoon sunlight. How about all of it? The good, the difficult, the unexpected. The whole package, she agreed. Just like you. Later that evening, as I walked through my penthouse, now redecorated to reflect my personal taste rather than a compromise with Rachel's preferences, I paused before the wall where I'd hung a single piece of art, not an expensive painting or valuable sculpture, but but a simple framed quotation, hand-lettered by a local artist I discovered at a community fair. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. I traced the words with my fingertip, reflecting on the journey they represented. The painful ending of my marriage had ultimately led to a beginning, not just a new chapter, but a new way of writing the story of my life. The following day, I received a call from Detective Hayes, informing me that Rachel had accepted a plea deal, probation, and community service, with an agreement to testify against Marcus and the international buyers connected to the stolen artwork. She asked me to thank you, Hayes said. For what, she didn't specify. For the truth, I replied simply. That's all. As spring turned to summer, Phoenix Holdings expanded its community initiatives, launching a women's entrepreneurship program, alongside our financial literacy workshops. I took a more active role in mentoring promising young professionals, particularly women from disadvantaged backgrounds, who reminded me of myself before my father's inheritance gave me the capital to start my company. You could have retired 3 times over by now, James remarked after a particularly long strategy session. What keeps you going? I considered the question seriously. Purpose, I suppose, and the chance to build something that matters beyond the bottom line. The Olivia Shepherd legacy, he mused, more than just an impressive portfolio. That night, I stood on my penthouse balcony, watching the city lights twinkle against the darkening sky. A year ago, I'd stood in this same spot feeling vindicated but hollow, having exposed Rachel and Marcus's betrayal but still keeping parts of myself hidden. Now, as a warm breeze stirred my hair, I felt something I hadn't anticipated finding again so soon. Peace. Not the false peace of avoiding conflict or the temporary peace of winning a battle, but the enduring peace that comes from integrity, from alignment between your inner and outer worlds. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Reminder, brunch tomorrow to plan the leadership retreat. You're bringing the mimosas. I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. The simplicity of the exchange, a friend, a plan, a shared responsibility, filled me with gratitude for the authentic connections that now formed the foundation of my life. The divorce papers that had trembled in my hands a year ago had represented an ending. But standing here now, I recognize they had also marked a beginning, the start of a journey toward wholeness that had led me not back to where I'd been before Rachel, but forward to a new place entirely. A place where success wasn't measured by what you accumulated or achieved, but by how fully you lived your truth, how generously you shared your gifts, and how courageously you faced each new day. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.